Spring. A season of new life and beauty. A season of endings and beginnings. A season of rebirth and vibrancy. But more than anything, spring is a season of
trains! Hello everyone, Michael here, and welcome back to a brand new video! My oh my, has it been a while! In any event, today we're riding another steam train, but not at Strasburg this time.
What?
Instead, we're going about 80 miles south to the city of Frederick, Maryland, and if we head just a few miles north, we'll find the town of Walkersville. And what exactly you might find in such a backwater rinky-dink town? Well, steam trains apparently! Say hello to the Walkersville Southern Railroad, on which we will be riding today. And as usual, we will be going over everything from the history to the seats to the ride to the sights and of course the price. Value. So why don't you join me as we go for a scenic ride through the Monocacy River Valley on the Walkersville Southern Railroad. Our day began with, well, first arriving in Walkersville much earlier than needed to get a bunch of cool shots of the train going by, such as this one. And as for the arrive before departure time, there really isn't any on the Walkersville Southern's main website. Instead, I'm going to give you guys my own recommendation on what it should be, which I think should be 45 minutes before departure. Why do I think this should be the time? Well, based on my experience, that should give you plenty of time to look through the Railroad Museum, take a good look at the HO scale train layout if it's open, and take a shop tour, which they seem to give out randomly. And if you're a hardcore train spotter, I recommend about 2 hours before departure. That would give you plenty of time to go and chase the train out to get some shots. And speaking of train spotting, here comes Jetto Call number 85 with the 11 o'clock train. Now I would like to clarify that this is the Steam Day event which the Walkersville Southern Railroad gives out every May to early June. However, once the summer begins, the Walkersville Southern will begin running diesel-powered trains again, which is arguably what they're most known for. So let me know down in the comments if you guys would like to see me also cover the diesel-powered trains here. But now that our train has arrived, it is time for an hour wait for it to get refilled with water and coal. And for that to happen, the train needs to cross over the road into the yard in a very cool fashion. And as mentioned previously, number 85 spent the next hour getting refilled with water and coal. In the meantime, we chowed down on some hot dogs from the hot dog stand at the station and went on a shop tour. Unlike Strasburg's shop tours, which do not allow any videography or photography taken inside of their main back shop, the Walkersville Southern actually encourages it. So here's a bunch of information and clips that I got while I was on it. By far the most intriguing piece inside of their shop is steam locomotive number 8, a one-of-a-kind geared steam locomotive which the Walkersville Southern built in-house all by themselves from scratch. And yes, you heard me right, this is a geared steam locomotive, meaning that it is in the same classification group as a Climax or a Heisler. But all this dinky little fella is used for is just track maintenance, whistle demos, or even just plain old fun. And it also kind of resembles Bash and Dash from Thomas and Friends.
I'm Ferdinand.
Other interesting things inside the shop included 20-ton Davenport number 2, which was the railroad's main locomotive for quite some time, but at the moment she's getting serviced. And we of course cannot forget about EMD Model 40 number 101. Now the EMD Model 40 is actually one of my top favorite diesels of all time. I mean, this thing is just so damn cute. What else is impressive is that out of the 11 total Model 40 units built between 1940 and 1943, number 101 is, at least as far as my knowledge goes, one or maybe out of 2 currently operational Model 40s still around. By this point, our shop tour was over and we were starting to cut it a bit close to our train ride. The train itself had already pulled up to the station while we were on the tour, so all there was left for us to do was to show our tickets to the conductor and hop aboard. While we're here, I might as well already talk about the price of this ride. On the steam train ride, there are 3 options or 3 classes that you can choose from when riding it, which are coach, parlor car, and caboose. Now, we paid to ride in coach, which is $25 per person over 13 years old, meaning that we spent a collective amount of $50 for our tickets. Coach class is located on the 3 cars in the front of the train, which includes 2 open-air flatbed cars and 1 enclosed and air-conditioned coach car. The parlor car class is located on the single parlor car just behind coach class and is the 4th car away from the locomotive. And as far as I can tell, all it offers is style as you get to ride in these fancy sofas. As for the parlor car, it is $50 per person of all ages over 2 years old. And finally, the caboose, which is located on the back of the train, no surprise there, is available for private charters only of up to 20 people. And the caboose is $500 per ride of a charter up to 20 people. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. No, I'm just kidding. But what this video is sponsored by is that subscribe button down below, which you should totally go and press, seeing as we're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and we sure could use your help. So if you enjoy and support content like this, or if you just like my videos in general, then why don't you just go ahead and hit that button down there already? It's completely free, and it helps me to make even more awesome videos just like this. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below to help support this channel. Anyway, with that said, let's get back to the video. Thanks a ton. And before we knew it, we were already underway making our way to Frederick. And while our journey continues, now seems like the perfect time to talk a little bit about the history of the Walkersville Southern Railroad as well as the locomotive currently pulling us. Our story begins in 1867, when a charter was acquired by the Frederick and Pennsylvania Line Railroad to build a line running from Frederick, Maryland to a town called Kingsdale on the Mason-Dixon line. The railroad quickly began construction of the line in 1869, with the line being fully completed by September of 1872 and opening just a few weeks later on October 7th, 1872, with a total build cost of $870,000, which in today's money is equivalent to roughly $5,270,000. 2 years later, the Frederick and Pennsylvania Line Railroad, with not much of their own equipment to run the line, leased the railroad to the Pennsylvania Railroad on January 1st of 1875, and not long after, in July of that same year, the PRR formally made the line into the Frederick subdivision. Of course, this process was a lot more than just a name change, but this was done in order to have control of it and to operate the line with its own locomotives. And it was good running business ever since, with the line's main purpose being to serve a limestone kiln in downtown Frederick, deliver fertilizer to farmers of the surrounding area, and even offer limited passenger services. But starting in December of 1896, things start to get a bit complicated. You see, the company who originally built the line, the Frederick and Pennsylvania Line Railroad, was reorganized by the Pennsy that year into the Frederick and Northern Railroad Company. Just a few months later, the company itself merged with the Littlestown Railroad and the Hanover and York Railroad Company, which were both also controlled by the Pennsy. Yet another merger was observed, with the newly constructed Central Railroad of Maryland merging into the Hanover and York in 1914, thus becoming the York, Hanover, and Frederick Railroad Company. I told you it'd get confusing because the railroad just switched hands 8 times within the period of 30 years. Well, at least it probably won't do it again until the creation of the Tourist Railroad, right? right? While the YH&F Railroad Company continued to be a wholly owned subsidiary of the Pennsy well into the 40s and even after the creation of the Pendel Company, which, if you are not familiar with, was a sub-company of the PRR to own and operate more subsidiaries in the Midwest. The little company even ran on through the creation of Penn Central, the horror of Penn Central, just ask the railroad equipment.
Where am I?
And even through Penn Central's bankruptcy. But even through all of that, the YH&F Rail Company continued to operate until Penn Central fully dissolved in the mid-70s. But it's here where things really took a steep decline. With both the Pennsylvania Railroad and the Penn Central gone, the YH&F Rail Company had no other company to cling to and had no choice but to cease operation. And to make matters worse, in 1972, the infamous Hurricane Agnes hit the Northeast, and it hit it hard. After it ended, most of the people in the region were left to deal with dangerous floodwaters, high winds, torn apart buildings, and destroyed railways. And the Walkersville Southern was no exception to this. What was left behind after the storm had passed was simply a mess. Most of the trackage had been torn up, and not to mention the bridge which spanned the Monocacy River was completely washed away. 8 years later, the railroad switched hands once again when the Maryland Midland Railway took over all operations of the line. However, since the Monocacy River Bridge was destroyed by Agnes, the railway could only operate north of Walkersville, while the part of the line that remained south was left to the complete mercy of Maryland's vegetation. And not even 2 years later, in 1982, the Maryland and Midland Railway found themselves stuck in debt after constantly repairing the old line. And with the IRS now up their backs, the Maryland and Midland finally decided to transfer all ownership of the line to the state of Maryland. And so, just like that, it seemed like the story of the original line segment built by the Pennsylvania and Frederick Line Railroad, built almost 120 years prior, was coming to an end. Thankfully, and to absolutely everybody's surprise, in 1991, a group of volunteers under their newly formed coalition, the Walkersville Southern, banded together to clear the line of weeds and grasses. The volunteers of the Walkersville Southern pressed on with their refurbishment of the line, most notably with them beginning a rebuild of the Monocacy River Bridge in 1995 that was swept away by Hurricane Agnes more than 20 years ago. Tourist operations also began that same year, with running limited trains to the Monocacy River until the rebuild of the bridge was completed. Since beginning their tourist operations in 1995, the railroad began to grow steadily, and with the help of just 3 small diesel locomotives, those being 18-ton Plymouth No. 1, GE 44-ton switcher No. 9331, and 20-ton Davenport No. 2, the railroad finally once again brought in steady revenue. The new Monocacy River Bridge was completed relatively quickly by March of 1996, with the first excursions running over it later that year. Now that a way of crossing the Monocacy River was finally brought back, the railroad began restoring the portion of track running down south to Frederick between 1997 and 1998. The thought was to offer longer excursion trains to passengers and to extend freight service to downtown Frederick. However, by this time, this plan really made no sense economically, especially seeing that there is a very small amount of providers in downtown Frederick who actually have a need for a small railroad to carry their goods. So instead, the plan was scrapped, and the line was restored up until its current terminus point at Harmony Grove. Their inability to rebuild track down to Frederick didn't discourage them, however, as in 2008 they received a massive grant to begin restoring track north of Walkersville. This restoration would cover more than 2.2 miles of track leading up to Glade Road near Woodsboro, with the entire project being completed in January of 2014. Unfortunately, in March of 2024, the railroad discontinued some of its services to that portion of track, and as of May 2025, some of it has been abandoned and they run no trains there currently. Now jumping ahead to 2012, when the railroad hosted their first steam locomotive, which was none other than the Grambling Locomotive Works Flag Coal No. 75, which is actually the sister locomotive of Jetto Coal 85, the locomotive currently pulling us. Even though this was the first time that a steam locomotive had run over the Walkersville Southern's tracks in over 60 years, No. 75 only stayed a couple of months. Thankfully though, steam returned to the Walkersville Southern just a few months later in 2013, and this time it was the Lehigh Valley No. 126, and then it left in 2014. and then returned in 2016, and then left again, but then returned one final time in 2021, and left again. But it was swiftly replaced with Jetto Coal number 85 that same year. Speaking of number 85, let's dive into a bit of her history as well, shall we? Reroll the music! Jetto Coal number 85 is a saddle tank engine built by the Vulcan Iron Works of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 1928 as an 040T wheel arrangement or a grasshopper. He was originally built for use at the A.E. Dick Construction Company in Pittsburgh, where he remained until 1933 when he was sold to his namesake company, Jetto Highland Coal Company in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Number 85 continued to work very diligently there, switching and pulling coal trains at their mine there in Hazleton. He served through the fall of steam and well into the 1960s, and in 1964, he was sold to a train collector from New York by the name of Gordon Brenthrup, who moved him to Horseheads, New York to be put on static display at a roadside diner. A few years later in 1970, he was taken off display to be repainted and cosmetically restored. He was shortly then put back on static display, where he remained until 2007. It was during that year that he was finally purchased by the Grambling Locomotive Works of Ashley, Indiana, where he was restored to operating condition between 2011 and 2017. He then ran for the first time in over 50 years on the weekend of September 9th, 2017 at the Allentown and Auburn Railroad in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. And number 85 has been hopping his way up and down the East Coast, running on a variety of different railways ever since. And in 2021, he finally made his way onto the Walkersville Southern Railroad. And after leaving and coming back a few times, number 85 came back to the Walkersville Southern Railroad in 2023, 2024, and now in 2025 for their Steam Trade Ride event. And that brings us to today, with Jetto Coal number 85 pleasingly pulling us to the terminus of the line. The Walkersville Southern and Jetto Coal 85 have had a rough history, with both of them changing hands multiple times. They have faced scrapping, bankruptcy, lawsuits, and worst of all, the IRS. But against all odds, here we are, riding the Frederick line, built almost 150 years ago by the Frederick and Pennsylvania Line Railroad, with Mac pulling us through and over the Monocacy River Bridge as truly the little railroad that could. We are now on the final leg of the journey southbound, seeing as we have now just crossed the Monocacy River Bridge and are about to cross Monocacy Boulevard. We have not much time left till we reach the terminus, Harmony Grove. And while we're on our way there, let me quickly tell you about my thoughts on the ride so far. First of all, I gotta say, the ride was surprisingly smooth. I could stand and walk around and not have to move and bend all over the place just to stay upright. And I can't even say the same for most Amtrak rides, so the track quality here is incredible. And the seats are quite comfortable as well, especially in the enclosed coach car where you can actually flip them back and forth. And yes, I finally got footage of me doing that. The seats in the flatbeds were of course not as comfortable because they were made of wood, but I can't really vouch for them anyway since I was standing most of the time to film. Now that we have reached Harmony Grove, it is time for a rather interesting turnaround operation. Unlike most tourist railroads, which simply move the locomotive to the other side of the train through an interchange switch, or just have a separate locomotive on the opposite end of the train, the Walkersville Southern has more of a commuter rail approach to the situation. How is that, you may ask? Well, similar to commuter railroads, they use a cab car, which is usually an unpowered passenger car with a cab at the end of it for the engineer to remotely control the locomotive. This reduces complexity by not having to turn the entire train around and not using an extra locomotive to move the entire train the other direction. Except the Walkersville Southern's cab car is a little bit more quirky, being an actual converted caboose with its own horn and everything. Now that we have a new established front of the train, I think it's best for me to sit back and let you guys enjoy the passing scenery as we head back to Walkersville. And just like that, we have now safely arrived back in Walkersville. Yeah, let's go.
That was a long ride.
Come back again.
Thank you.
Bye. Come back again.
Have a nice day, So with that, that is going to be it for today's video. As always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help us reach 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It would mean so much to me if we could hit that goal. Of course, thank you for watching. It has, as always, been such a blast putting this video together, and I do hope you stick around to see some of the new videos I have planned, because trust me, some of them are absolutely crazy. But anyway, that's gonna be it for me, and until the next video, goodbye.